Tonight's tech tip is inductors. If you remember last week, like 3 meetings ago, it was capacitors. I'm basically going to repeat the entire tech tip because capacitors and inductors are almost the same thing. Guys, if you don't mind passing those inductors around. There'll be a couple of inductors coming around, different types. Basically, the way inductors work is this cool thing called Lenz's law. I'm actually not going to use that for a second. If this mic is a piece of wire, it turns out if I have a current going through it like this, I'm going to have a magnetic field wrapping around it. And if I wrap that into a coil like this, I'm going to get kind of this like donut-shaped magnetic field, which is going to be storing energy. Contrast this with the capacitors where you have the 2 plates and an electric charge. And it turns out all the same stuff applies to an inductor as it does to a capacitor. So the whole thing of holding energy and releasing it later, yeah, it does that. The whole phase shift thing, yeah, it does that. It just does it in a different direction. So again, remember from the capacitors thing, you can do this cool thing of using capacitors and inductors to store energy and pass energy back and forth, and actually as filters and things like that, all of the same applies. So not too much more I can get into in this short format, but I have a couple other things here. Here's a couple of symbols of inductors, and the big thing, and you'll notice this with the inductors that are being passed around, you can have different core materials, and they are going to be used at different frequencies. So here I've got just 2 solid lines over it. That's a iron core inductor. That's like the transformer looking thing. If you have the dashed lines, that's a ferrite core. When you start thinking ferrites, we think of like chokes and things like that in radio. You're getting to, yeah, Larry, don't break it. It's a solid chunk of iron. He's not going to break it. No, you get into higher frequencies with ferrites. And then the last one, it has no little bars over it. That is an air core inductor, and those you can use for very high frequencies, including radio frequencies. So when you have like an antenna and a coil in the middle of it, guess what? That's an inductor.